Tonight on KGW News.
I mean, you're home, man. You're supposed to feel safe at your house.
A father feeling both grief and anger after his 12-year-old son is murdered. Why he says the man who pulled the trigger could have been stopped. Plus, a federal judge gives Oregon's gun control law the green light. So what happens now? And
this isn't making sense. This isn't adding up. What is going on here?
Why is a Clark County prison many considered a success being shut down? Then later,
I was worried that it was going to be maybe about a year out, maybe 2 years out.
Back down the road from Mount St. Helens when it finally took to free the cars cut off by a landslide. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Mulco, and we begin with a father who is both outraged and devastated, speaking out tonight after his son was killed in a murder-suicide, a horrific crime he says that could have entirely been prevented. A warning, some of the details here are disturbing. Our Tim Gordon talked to that dad today about his son and the red flag he says that was raised in court just a day before the violence.
They called me and told me a van drove through my garage. And then my son texts me. He's all, "Dad, come home. Rick's here."
Patrick Landers has moments when he can be calm. Here, describing when he found out there was trouble at his Damascus home on Wednesday afternoon, and describing the last text his 12-year-old son Patrick Jr. would ever send him.
The little man, dude, always happy, always playing. I think that's where we're done.
But this is the toughest time any dad could face. His young son shot and killed in what the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office says was a murder-suicide. The man with the gun, Landers' daughter's estranged husband, 34-year-old Ricochet Kerr. Despite a restraining order put in place, authorities say Kerr drove through a gate and into the garage door to get into the house, then shot and killed Patrick Jr. and 2 family dogs, a St. Bernard and a pit bull. Then he killed himself. Landers' daughter was not at the home, but he says Kerr contacted her when he was there. This is very disturbing to hear.
He FaceTimed her, showed her my son and her brother was dead, and then ate the bullet.
Landers at times cannot control his anger or his language. He is frustrated that a court in Washington County did not hold his son's killer during a hearing on Tuesday.
Judge granted the restraining order because the guy was just being dumb. Stands up in court, says, "I'm going to kill myself." Right there, it should have been over and done. We shouldn't even be having this conversation.
He should have been held.
Yeah.
He is also frustrated with law enforcement, who he feels did not treat the situation with urgency. He says deputies were staged at the top of his driveway when he came rushing home.
I cut around everybody, start coming down the hill, and they start shooting at my truck.
Deputies?
Yeah. Why? What? Oh, we're scared somebody's going to actually do what you guys should have been doing?
And above all else, the death of a son, so fresh and painful.
I mean, you're home, man. You're supposed to feel safe at your house. It's supposed to be the one place you go home.
You can feel his pain there. Tim Gordon reporting tonight. The Clackamas County Sheriff's Office tells us they are not able to comment further given the ongoing investigation. We also asked Washington County court administrators to provide some clarity over what happens if somebody tells the court they plan to harm themselves or harm others. We have not yet heard back. We also want to remind you tonight that if you or someone you know is in crisis, you can reach the National Suicide Prevention Hotline anytime, 24/7 by simply calling 988. Again, that number, 988. You are not alone. So significant developments now for Oregon's gun control measure 114, with a federal judge ruling today that all parts of that measure are constitutional. 114, which voters passed last November, requires a permit process to buy a gun and bans magazines holding more than 10 rounds. The judge said the Second Amendment does not protect large capacity magazines. Her decision also said the permit system is consistent with other regulations the U.S. Supreme Court has already deemed constitutional. But here is the thing. This ruling doesn't actually change anything in the state, at least not yet. That is because of the ongoing legal challenge at the state level being heard in Harney County Court, with a trial set for September. Now, that judge will not look, of course, at the U.S. Constitution, but at Oregon's state constitution. Regardless of that outcome, experts expect appeals in both cases, which leaves Measure 114 in limbo for months or potentially longer. To get you caught up on tonight's other headlines now, the Oregon Ethics Commission has voted to launch a full investigation into former Secretary of State Shemia Fagan. Members today said she may have violated state ethics laws, but the vote does not rule on that one way or the other. It simply means the commission will investigate further. Now, this, of course, all related to Fagan's work as a consultant for a cannabis company during her time in office. In Gresham, the major crimes team is investigating a homicide. It happened around 3:30 this afternoon at the Crystal Creek condos. That's off 162nd Avenue, just south of Burnside. All police will say right now is that a man was shot and pronounced dead at the scene. And in southwest Portland, one person was killed in a crash that shut down Barber Boulevard for several hours this afternoon. Authorities say 2 vehicles were involved just north of Capitol Highway. 1 woman was killed. Another person was taken to the hospital. No word on their condition or the cause. Well, tonight there is new pushback and clarity around a prison closure in Clark County, with the Larch Correction Center slated to shut its doors this October, while folks who work there and live in the community pledge to keep it open. Alma McCarty is following up for this after a very engaged community meeting she reported on last week. Alma, you were looking for answers and specifics from the state. What'd you learn?
Well, David, since that meeting, the DOC has been a little more detailed about why the state chose to shut down Larch specifically. It's a combination of factors, from a declining inmate population and a surplus of minimum security beds to Larch's location and the need for tens of millions in repairs.
Last week, a group of more than 100 packed into a conference room in Clark County to discuss the merits of Larch Correction Center amid seemingly abrupt notice of its closure.
We're here as a community trying to fight to keep our facility open, to do the things that we've been doing.
Speakers highlighted inmates' contributions to fighting wildfires, Larch's one-of-a-kind educational environment, and its unique, long-standing relationship with the community in Southwest Washington. Many found it hard to believe that the Department of Corrections would choose to close this facility in October.
This isn't making sense. This isn't adding up. What is going on here?
I reached out to the DOC for answers.
First and foremost, we'd say that it has nothing to do with the facility itself, the performance of the staff.
Chris Wright is a DOC spokesperson.
It's primarily because of its location. It's remotely located there in the southwest part of the state, higher on a mountain, literally, and compared to our other facilities. And it's in need of an estimated $31 million in repairs and infrastructure improvements over the next decade or so.
As for the Larch inmates who help fight wildfires, like the Tunnel 5 fire in the Gorge, that service will shift to Longview.
Plan is to make 70 beds available in Longview. And that's not a prison, it's a reentry center. And it's actually, we think, a more beneficial location. It's a little farther away.
Farther away from areas prone to wildfire. Larch was evacuated during the Nakia Creek fire last October. A first, Wright says, in the DOC's history. The closure due to these reasons, plus a reduction in the need for lower security beds.
Pretty much the only solution for keeping the facility open long term would be giving people more stiff sentences, say for simple drug possession. And I think in this part of the country, especially, it's pretty clear we moved away from that.
Opponents say closing Larch still isn't the answer to a declining incarcerated population.
Closing a standalone minimum facility like Larch Correction Center is not that positive ray of hope that a lot of people are looking at.
Let us continue the good work that we're doing, and because we're really doing reentry and we're really having an impact on the residents that we are responsible for, as well as this community.
Okay, Alma, it's clear people feel very passionate about this. What happens next?
Well, David, the group fighting to keep Larch open, comprised of both employees and community members, will be out tomorrow at Esther Short Park in Vancouver to hand out flyers and talk to people about the state's move to close Larch Correction Center. They've also contacted various elected leaders on the state and the federal level, hoping to reopen the conversation and reverse the decision. David?
Thank you, Alma. Let's get to Ashley Graham's now in for Matt this evening. Ashley, today was a scorcher. It sounds like tomorrow is going to be even hotter.
Right, David. Very warm. We made it up to 93 degrees today in Portland and Vancouver, but let's just put that into perspective. The record to beat today was 103, so we didn't quite make it there, but the average is usually the low 80s, so we did bump up about 10 degrees above average, and we're going to continue to see that tomorrow. Here's a quick look at that day planner. You can see make it up to 83 degrees by noon, and then 95. Could potentially jump up just a bit more than that, so again, expect these warm temperatures to continue, and most of the state is under a heat advisory. So we'll talk more about that, possible fire danger, and then we'll have that 7-day forecast for you after these news stories. David.
Thanks, Ashley. We'll see you in a few minutes here. Okay, we need a little good news tonight, right? We have it courtesy of the Spirit Lake Highway. That is the road to Mount St. Helens, because 2 months after a massive landslide, remember that, the drivers who had to be choppered out and who abandoned their vehicles near the observatory, they were finally able to drive them home. That is thanks to this. It's a temporary one-lane road through the slide zone. One driver who says he was just 5 or 10 yards from being swept away in it all says in the end, the way it worked out was really a best case scenario, and he put it all into perspective.
You know, I was thinking if I leave a little earlier, maybe it hits me. If I come a little later and it's dark, I don't see it. And the next day there were supposed to be kids coming up for field trips. So at the end of the day, you know, a car's a car.
Yeah, a car is a car. Nobody was injured in the slide. It's unclear when the temporary road might open to the public, but officials have indicated it could be several years before a permanent replacement.